Hey everybody, I'm back with the second volcano video. If you can't tell, I'm hiding in the girls' room. So you get to see their awesome, cool pink bunk beds. Boys, I know you're super jealous. Alright? So our last video, if you've watched it, we talked about Pompeii and how that destroyed this, not just the city of Pompeii, but it also destroyed a few other cities that were around there. Today I want to talk about a volcano that's called Mount Tambora, and it's in the country of Indonesia. But it didn't just destroy a city, didn't just destroy an island, didn't just destroy even a country. It affected the entire planet. Think about that for a second. You've seen globes, you've seen a map. Imagine one volcano doing enough damage and having an eruption big enough that it could change the entire world. Let's figure out how that happened. Well, in Indonesia, there's an island called Sumbawa. I will never ask you to remember that. But on that island is Mount Tambora. To get a picture of just how destructive this is, when it erupted, the sound that it made traveled around the world 3 times. Think about that. The sound that it made started in Indonesia, went around the world 3 times, and people could hear it from hundreds of miles away. Imagine where you are right now, hearing something that exploded from hundreds of miles away. Imagine being able to see it from miles away. That's how big the eruption is. And as soon as it erupted, it immediately killed tens of thousands of people. That's how large this is. I mean, that's a lot of people. Tens of thousands of people. Imagine that. That's like 1,000 of our schools right there, plus more. Imagine that. But that's not even the worst part. You see, we talked about in our last video, when a volcano erupts, it sends up ash and poisonous gas. Well, this eruption was so big that it sent so much ash into the sky that it went up into the air, and the wind in the air took it and it covered the entire atmosphere. So all those layers of air that surround our Earth were now not just air, but tiny bits of dirt, melted rock, and ash. Question for you guys. Where does the Earth get most of its heat from? Sunlight, right? Now, is sunlight going to be able to get through those clouds of dirt and ash and melted rock? Not as well, right? So let's talk about some of the things that happened because of this eruption of Mount Tambora. Mount Tambora erupted in 1815, so a little over 200 years ago. Now, that was bad enough because it killed all those people. But back then, they didn't have TVs, they didn't have radios, they didn't have video cameras, and so people all around the world, they probably didn't really have an idea that this volcano erupted. In fact, most of them didn't. And so the real damage came in the summer of 1816. Now, we've talked about seasons. Imagine the summer. What's the temperature supposed to be like? Supposed to be warm, right? Now, what do you need to grow during summertime? I mean, you drive through the fields in Ohio and you see that. It's food, right? People do that all around the world. They grow things so people have food to eat. But what happens if it's not warm enough to grow food? What happens if it snows in the summertime? You might think to yourself, Mr. Spaghetti, it did not snow in the summertime. Well, all that ash in the air blocked out enough sun that in the months of June, in parts of our country today, was snow and ice on the ground that killed some of those crops that people were going to eat. And then in July, it would be freezing rain. Can plants grow when it's freezing rain? No. And so you began to have problems with people not having enough what? Food, right? And so that's just in our country. That was just in the United States. People didn't have enough food to eat. And that was bad enough. But in the continent of Europe, it was even worse. Because people didn't have enough food to eat. And because some countries had more food than others, guess what those countries started to do? They started to go to war to try and get some of that food from one another. And it all goes back to that volcano erupting and causing this year without a summer. And so you might think to yourself, well, that's our country, that's in North America, and that's in Europe. Is it really that bad everywhere else? Well, in Asia, and in China, and in India, where you had times that you're supposed to grow things, instead of it being really too hot, they started to get really bad rain and flooding because the weather got all messed up. Can you grow food when there's water all over the ground? No, you can't. Can you? That happened all around the globe where people didn't have enough food. And so while tens of thousands of people died when Mount Tambora erupted, it killed even more people because it was so powerful that it changed the seasons almost a year later. Think about that now. Go out, look up at the sky. Imagine if you couldn't see the sun or it was covered in volcanic ash for that long. And instead of running outside in a bathing suit in the summertime, maybe you're wearing jeans or a snowsuit and going sledding. That is what Mount Tambora did. It made it so one year in 1816, the world didn't really have a summer. And so that's why they call it the year without a summer. So that's the power of volcanoes. Imagine that. That a volcano could be so strong that it could literally change the entire planet. That's crazy.